Hey, everybody, if you see what I see, you see my guest today, at least is showcasing to me that she is on the beach having a ball. I don't know if that's real or if it's like my fake virtual screen behind me here or not, but we're going to find out. The beautiful thing about this show is when two people come together who have no idea who the other person is. My mother always used to tell me growing up, do not talk to strangers, and I understand why that is. And I'm not promoting that you without caution talk to strangers. But what I'm finding in talking to strangers is something exquisitely beautiful is happening. The more conversations I have, the more I find that we're not strangers at all. We're all, in some one way or another, completely connected to each other. And if we take the time to just listen to each other and hear the stories of each other, and we find those connections like a mosaic, we connect a world that is disconnected. We don't have to agree on everything. Sometimes we just connect corner to corner, which means we don't agree on most things. But this little place where we find connection is enough to make the mosaic whole and make the world work in a better way. And so, from this beautiful book that I wrote called The Mosaic, which is really the story about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out in search of the place called heaven. And the people he meets along the way are not the people that he thinks would show him heaven. They're not the rabbis and the priests and the swamis and the gurus and the shaman and the medicine women and aborigines or elders. They're simple, ordinary people. They're the homeless man and the road worker and the garbage man and the juice man and the gardener and the waitress. And he wonders, why am I meeting these people? What can they show me about heaven? But he decides, I'm going to sit with them because I'm here with them. Why don't I just sit with them and listen to them? And when he listens to them, in 100% of the cases, he sees that the person he initially saw is not at all who they are. And when it happens over and 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 over again ad nauseum, he starts to wonder, is there anything that I see as it is? Or is everything that I see who I am? And what would happen if I got myself out of the way? What would I actually see if I could see what's there, not just what I see? That's the story of the mosaic. Those conversations in that book inspired me to have these conversations in real life. And so it is with joy that I want to introduce you and me both, because I have no idea who this woman is, to Aparna Sain. Aparna, welcome to 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. How are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I actually have to admit that I love having conversations with strangers. I'm well, I'm quite a traveler. So I love to travel. I've traveled to many fun places around the world. And I have the thing I enjoy is getting not only to know strangers, but to learn about different cultures and different dynamics when I'm in different countries and how differently I react in different environments. So I love being taken out of my comfort zone. And I love to be able to experience new things, see new things, eat new foods, talk to different people. I've always loved that. So even when I was in college, I actually got a chance to live in France for for a couple of months during the summertime. And, the journey began. I love to travel. Now, here we are in a time where that is the one thing that with this COVID thing, I consider myself to be a yogi. So I actually teach people how to meditate and stay calm and stay away from anxiety and so forth. And so most things, I can pretty much handle stress levels, but not being able to travel, I have to admit, that gets to me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, already in your first 6 or 7 sentences, we share so much in common, which is unbelievable.
Nice.
I've spent 45 years meditating every single day without missing a day.
Good
So,
job. Yay.
so,
This
so,
morning I just taught kids meditation. So you have to be first time teaching kids. So I noticed I had to like be so dynamic for them to even stay engaged in the room. So yeah, well that's awesome.
yeah.
45 years is impressive.
Well, it's only impressive if it's, if you're sitting with someone who has done it less than 45 years. Some of the people I've sat with have done it, 60, 70, 80 years. But
Wow.
what's beautiful also that you said is how much you love to travel. And a lot of this conversations that I'm doing now is the result when I wrote the book and I finished it. The book told me, take the trip that Mo took. Go out and do that travel. Talk to people that nobody speaks to. Listen to people that nobody listens to, and just hear what they have to say. And create a documentary called "The Voice of the Voiceless." And I was about to leave on March 1st. Well,
Wow.
about a week before
Yeah.
March 1st, Mr. COVID came to town and said, "Ha ha ha." And the Jews have a great saying. They say, "Man plans and God laughs." And I think she's having the time of her life with me right now because I am not going anywhere right now. But then through the gift of the internet and through the gift of social media, we're able to have these conversations just sitting in our living rooms or our offices or whatever. And I'm having beautiful conversations. And there's something special, even more special, because people feel so isolated and alone now. So to have a conversation at this point where people really feel heard and really feel understood is really making a huge difference in my life and in their life as well. So I
It's a
want to
beautiful
ask you.
thing you're doing.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said it's a beautiful thing you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So I want to ask you, with all that's going on, and we so often just answer great or fine and we leave it at that because we don't really care to hear. But I really do care to hear. How are you?
Yeah, it's a really nice loaded question. I'm actually doing great, to be honest. Totally honest. I noticed that with COVID, there are certain areas of my life that have been severely enhanced. There were a lot of things like being able to be more connected online was something I was actually just putting off. Simply because was like, it would be nice to do, but I had so many other things running around doing things. For example, I actually teach meditation and yoga on the Hill.
Wow.
So I teach at the Capitol and so forth. So I
So
was
on
always
the Hill, you're meaning Washington D.C. on Capitol
Capitol.
Hill. Okay,
Yeah.
because we nobody knows where you're from. We don't know what hill that could be.
Oh yeah, and I'm sitting by the beachside. Yes. So
Right.
Capitol Hill. It was one of the things I really wanted to do. So I started doing that. It's been about a year and a half. And I teach right behind the Capitol. We have these office buildings. And so I teach both meditation and yoga. And I've taught different congressmen and so forth. So I've been living a good life, but now everything is remote. And I get a chance to put myself on an electronic platform, be on Zoom, offering classes to all kinds of people, kids, something I didn't think I would do, people suffering from addiction, people suffering from, or just people just being anxious and needing something where they are now more eager to try meditation. So as you might know or have experienced is that a lot of times people who are really busy, they think meditation is like, one day I'll get to it. It's like someday, yes. Well, someday has become now. So for me, from my perspective on life, it's a really nice thing to have because I actually quit or when the financial market crashed back in 2009, I used to be part of a successful venture business back then and living in Silicon Valley. And then when that market crashed, my entire portfolio crashed and went from like
Ouch.
zero revenue, yeah, coming in. So I had to take a deeper look at what fulfillment meant for me. Even though I had all these great brand name jobs, everything I wanted, I was never really feeling fulfilled. So I had a chance to back then go live in an ashram and really go deeper in my meditation journey and my own spiritual journey in India. And I come from an Indian background. So it was really important for me to go back there to experience that. All of those teachings are now culminating as a result of COVID. I live on my own. I would not have been able to handle living by myself 3, 4, 5 months of isolation, but I actually view it as a gift. And so be it, so it is, So I'm doing pretty well, to
I
sum it
love
up.
that. I often say to people that when you can't go outside, it's an obvious thing to go inside. And
Yes,
so why not go within? Why not take this time where you can't go out anyway to explore the greatest journey that you could ever have, which is the journey of getting to know yourself and sit with yourself and see what you feel, what you believe, what happens when you get to the center of yourself rather than the periphery of what yourself is, and how that changes your life if it does. And it's such a beautiful invitation from such a little virus. And I wonder if in that same virus consciousness we could finally create a virus of love that might emanate out in the same way this virus of sickness has emanated out, that could touch people without them even knowing it, that we could be carriers that are invisible carriers that just spread that love just by the sheer presence of our being without trying to fix people, help people, change people, or do it, but just that we are carriers of that love. What do you think about that?
that's beautiful. It's very nicely put, actually. One of my paths or purpose in this life is to bring a different way of being conscious to the business world. Ever since a pretty young age, I've been very determined and ambitious towards success and always chased it for, so many years, 12, 15 years. And, I've been blessed to have some really nice jobs, but I realized that all that chase would never have gotten me anywhere
Mm,
if I didn't ground it into my own spiritual journey and evolution. And I'm really happy, as they say, life happens to us, not, it doesn't happen to us, it happens for us.
right.
And that's a pretty subtle and a important distinction because it does
Huge.
happen for us. And as my life is unfolding, I noticed that I would not have been comfortable taking that journey inward if I had just been left to my own accord, if I had not been able to study yoga, the inner science of yoga to the level that I have. Because even now I get tested. I mean, all the time, right? There's such a lure of wanting to go into the outside world. It's very, very, Yogananda, who was the first yogi to come from India, and impart some of that Eastern knowledge on us, always said anybody that can master themselves can master the whole world. And self mastery is something that like makes my world go round. I teach that, I promote it, I try and live it in my own life. So there's no better time than now for personal transformation.
Yes.
No better time.
Is
And
it
people are
possible?
scrambling to
Is it
look.
possible we share the same guru? Are you a disciple of Yogananda?
I do teach and practice Kriya Yoga, but I also have a live guru right now. I love Yogananda and grew up with his, autobiography of a yogi and so forth. But I have a live guru right now
I
who I
see.
work with. So his name is Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev. So Isha Foundation. He's pretty big on YouTube.
Fabulous. I
Yes.
I was self realization fellowship. Um, I was in a rebel community of self realization fellowship started by a man who used to be the vice president there and was thrown out.
Oh,
His name was Kriyananda, and he started
oh.
he started a community called Ananda, and
Mhm.
I was a monk in that community for 10 years. So I know yoga, and I love. I mean, that you're right in my
Oh,
backyard right now,
yeah,
speaking
yeah. Well,
So,
that's great because I've been to the Ananda Center in Palo Alto.
oh, really?
Yeah, and I mean, it's Yogananda was phenomenal, you know, as a yogi and just the things he went through. I can't even imagine trying to introduce some of these concepts to people for the very first time because
Yeah,
even though people have heard of meditation or a lot of people, you know, there's still people out there who have a reservation to it.
yeah, and
Um,
especially when he came.
yeah, so when he came, I mean, imagine, right? And so that's why he used to say, like, he can just be out in the Himalayas meditating. He didn't have to be here, but his guru kept sending him back.
Yeah,
And he was like, no, go back out there because that's your path. So I find it pretty difficult sometimes, even trying to bring a meditation or a sense of consciousness into the world. Now more than ever, the world is ready for a lot of these things, but you know, bringing the concept of heart, because ultimately consciousness is about dialing into compassion and heart, bringing that concept of heart to people in the business world is kind of my life path and journey. But it's still challenging, you know. Everybody wants to talk about it, give it some lip service, but really embodying and living it, I think it takes an element of slowing down and really being able to go deeper within.
yeah. Under separate cover, I would love to have a conversation because you and I are doing in very different ways. Bless you. You and I are doing in very different ways the same thing because part of what has happened over the course of my life is I look different than people.
That's
And
right. You look like a yogi.
I look like, either depends what perspective you have. Either I look like a homeless guy or a yogi. So, both add to my advantage. But the beautiful thing is I walk into corporations and being different has used to be the side thing that kept me isolated and alone. But suddenly it changed when companies wanted to innovate and people wanted to say, we're just seeing the same thing over and over again. And how can we see differently? And they would invite me into some of the most exclusive boardrooms to talk, to just be with them and experience a different experience of the experience they were having. And so when I would initially walk in, they were wearing three-piece suits and I was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. And they thought I was coming to clean the place. And I said, you're right. I am coming to clean the place. I'm going to take most of your garbage away, but I don't
Yeah.
think it's the way you think I'm going to do it. I think they said, well, what are you doing here? I said, well, you hired me to come in here and work with you and to do some innovation work. And they said, really? Like, you don't look like we thought that we did. I said, I'm sorry. So did you want someone who looks exactly like you to come in here and tell you exactly what you want to believe? I'm happy you've paid me already. I'm happy to walk out and let you go hire that person. But for right now, wouldn't it be fabulous to just be able to see something you don't see? And it became the most really successful things, and people really had big breakthroughs, and companies started to think differently and feel differently and experience differently. And most of it came, I believe, not from the words that I said. I have nice words, but it came from the vibration of presence.
Exactly.
And people feel when you walk into a room and you have something and you have a different feeling, people feel that presence.
Mm,
And it isn't hard then when they feel something they want to give them what they want.
mm.
It's hard to give them something they don't want or don't think they want. And so I just hold the space like that invisible virus that we were talking about of COVID. I hold that space of just loving and accepting people, just listening to people and understanding people and acknowledging what people are saying and validating them. And in that space, they say, wow, I don't know many people that do this. People normally have an answer for me as soon as I say something. They're normally thinking. I can see them thinking of what they want to say while I'm talking. I don't do that. I listen. So enough about me. What makes you happy?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. To be honest, actually, what makes me happy is just being able to share a lot of the stuff that I have in me as a yogi, as someone who's been on a spiritual path since the age of 7. So it's being able to really share what this whole path of spirituality and spirituality and really going inward means, and kind of that beauty that's created when we connect to the oneness that's within us. So true happiness for me is just being able to connect with that,
Yeah.
but also being able to connect with it. Now, there was a long time when I would connect with that and I didn't want to be in the outside world. To me, that was like the opposite, unhappiness versus happiness. I was happy to sit in my meditation for hours on end. But what I learned over time and where I kind of struggled with it was when I had to bring myself out to the world in a very different way of being, as you're
Yeah.
mentioning, the presence. And now I feel lucky that, people notice, as you mentioned, the presence and are gravitating towards it. But there was a period in my life, what I call the really dark period, where it was within me and the outside seemed very not as beautiful as the inside.
So I'm interested why you call that a dark period, because when I see it, and I'm just sharing with you what I see. I'm just an old fat guy sitting in California. Okay, so who cares what I see? But I see that the reason you're able to come out to the world now the way you are is because you have that experience of being able to sit in that quiet by yourself, uninterrupted, not caring about what the world does or thinks or feels. That it wasn't really, to me it's not. And I'm asking you to tell me back why, what it is, because like what I hear is, when I hear you talk, I hear that has been like your schoolyard. That's been the place where you learned that all that happens out there isn't that important, so that now you can go with the presence of your center into that world and not be swayed by all the stuff that happens, but you can come as a centered being because you've had all that time. That it wasn't dark, it was beautiful. It was absolutely essential for you to be able to be where you are right now, unless you tell me it's dark, and that's what I want to hear. Why would it's the dark?
The reason it's dark and the reason I like speaking about it in a very honest way is because when I always considered myself to be a spiritual being, and I always was one that thought the deeper I go into my spirituality, it would be like floating on clouds, right? You're meditating. And this is a visual that a lot of times people give me too. It's like, you're just going to be floating on clouds and meditating, and all these answers and wonderful things will start just kind of coming into your orbit. And that, to a large part, is true. But what also happens is there is a whole another side of my personality. This is where I had to have that, and the darkness was because there was a space between the other side, which was success driven and wanted to have monetary success,
Yeah.
wanted to have success in relationships,
Hmm.
wanted to have success in a way that made sense to the external world. Even my world, because I felt like I was judged by those things. I've always judged myself by those things.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of conflict happening right there.
So there, let
Uh,
me interrupt you 1 second, because
yeah.
you said things and it just slips by, and sometimes I hear things and I just want to hear clearly what you're saying. I felt like I was judged by those things, and I felt like I judged myself by those things. Did you feel judged by others, or was it the judgment of yourself that then you saw in other people?
Well, so it's always that way. It's always the people are always mirroring us, and whether we like to acknowledge it that way or not.
Thanks for
So
clarifying.
all that time, though, when you're in it, sometimes you can't uh, live that from that mindset, right? So when I was in the midst of this, and I call it my dark, as we in the Western world they call it the dark night of the soul. I had no idea what that meant until I went there and then came out, and then I realized, oh my god, that's what that was. And boy, was the dark night really dark. And I could feel because it was so painful for me, I could still feel the chills from that experience. But
Still now. So
Even, well, now, I mean, thanks to COVID, actually, I've had a chance to really shed a lot of that. But I don't view it as a darkness, as you're saying now. I view it as a way to evolve. But when I began this journey, I did not know that I would need to be in that part of the
yeah,
path.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that you need that. I just thought we would always be swimming on clouds. Because initially, when I first started my spiritual journey, or going deeper in my meditations, it was just so beautiful
yeah.
that I just couldn't imagine anything, it just, and then I had to still deal with the fact that I have to find a way to pay my rent, and I have to find a way to kind of keep up with the lifestyle that I've created for myself.
Right.
And, all of those things that I really never wanted to let go of. And fortunately, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was like, it was more, it's all just kind of an inner journey. And I'm actually writing about that in my book, because I feel that to be, my purpose in this life is to be really honest with people about that. I don't want to be, I do feel that in a lot of yogis or a lot of spiritual people give off that persona that they've just arrived and enlightened and so forth. And yes, it's true. It is a beautiful thing. We can all attain it, no matter who you are. We all have the capabilities to be an enlightened being within ourselves. But by the same token, that enlightenment comes through facing things we may not want to deal with about ourselves.
Yeah, facing things I would say we definitely don't want to deal with. We
Yeah,
think that we've spent our life running away from the things that we have to see, and that process of getting to know ourselves is sitting in those places that we don't want to look at, and having somebody help us sit in those places where we don't want to look at, because our minds are so brilliant. I don't know about yours, but I know my mind's so brilliant that I think I'm going into those holes when I'm actually running around them, unless I have somebody
right.
watching me and working with me and helping me to see, whoa, whoa, slow down, big guy. Like I was always too chunky to swim in the clouds. I would fall right through and crash on Earth. So I never had that opportunity to, because of my girth. I'm just teasing. But I was one of those cherubian angels that didn't have my wings strong enough to hold me up. But I think the most beautiful thing in the whole world, I always say to people, if there's any way you can avoid this journey, avoid it. If you can be happy just living life out here like you are, go for it. But at one point, you'll get bitten by the snake and
Mm,
you will feel unfulfilled. You'll feel unhappy. When that journey starts, you have my greatest sympathies
mm,
and my greatest honor, because the road you're about to take will be the most glorious you ever took. But you will hate me as we walk through this together, because you have to go into those places now that you have to go into to get through what you have to get through. And so anybody who thinks this life is a life of just swimming pools and martinis and living an exotic life, they're right and they're wrong, and they're right and they're wrong, and it's all of it. But anybody who's real, you'll see it in the scars in their being as they walk with you.
mm.
You'll see every bruise that they've had. And if they tell you they haven't, I would look a little deeper. Let's go to another place if we
Beautiful. Yeah.
let's let's go to another place. Lightning round, just to get a quick idea of who you are and what you like. And you can take a long time or short time, okay? Are you a dog or cat person?
Dog.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Definitely coffee.
I always thought that there were going to be definitely one or the other, but I'm finding some people are not, and I'm always amazed that people drink both, because I'm like a real coffee person. I don't like tea.
Me too. In fact, in the spiritual path, that's one thing if they had told me early on that I would one day have to give up coffee to keep up with my meditation practice, I probably would have been like, no, because most things don't bother me. I don't eat meat. I don't drink alcohol anymore.
Yeah,
And haven't for like 10 years. But the coffee thing, it's like, oh my gosh, that taste and the smell and just about the experience. I kind of really need that.
yeah. I like it too. Although my wife has made me this little drink that has all sorts of good things in it, that is, but
Mhm.
it also gives a charge. There's nothing bad in it. Would you say you're a person that is in the box or out of the box?
We're definitely out of the box.
Love that.
You can't be a spiritual person and be in the box. That box is going to be blown way out.
So I would challenge you a little bit on that, and I would love to hear your reply. Not because I'm eager to hear your reply, because I find a lot of spiritual people that once they become spiritual get in the spiritual box and don't have the courage to get out of the spiritual box, and they get stuck in this box where you were talking about everything looks good and they put on this persona of this is who they are, but that isn't who they are. They got to get out of the box of they have to be out of the box that they got out of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and some of the yogis always say that it's an ego thing on either side.
Yeah.
So if we start saying I'm a spiritual being, life needs to be this way, I'm only spiritual, I'm only this, that's an ego. Right there, you stepped into your ego because you've given yourself an identity based on spirituality. So you're just using a different language, you're going through the same stuff. And the other side speaks for itself when we're in our ego mind. So the ego, and this is why I love the way we say it in yoga, is that all of us are students and we're all beginners.
Yeah.
So, that's all that it is. So I may teach or share meditation with people, but I'm a student. When I get into the mat and I sit down and I meditate, I am a beginner. And if I think I'm some advanced yogi, boy, life is, things are going to bring me down to my knees. Where I
Yeah.
lived in the ashram, my teacher always said that, when people come in with the, I'm a PhD and I have an MBA and I have all these things, and you come into the ashram, the first thing, the higher the degree, the lower the task. So they're going to start cleaning the bathrooms as their
Yeah.
task,
Love it.
So because we are all got to learn to work with our different levels and our different layers and shed that ego.
Yeah.
Now, thou shalt not protest that much. Unfortunately, I also protested and I continue to do so in a lot of ways. But, being humble and surrendering is the single most important thing you can do in a way to live your life.
Yeah. I
So
love that. I love
simply
that.
surrender, because that's whether no matter what religion you're in, the longer and the sooner you recognize that surrender is the path to your being and to your wholeness, the sooner you kind of get to be happy.
Yeah. There's something so interesting I remember Kriyananda telling a story about Yogananda. And Kriyananda had lived with him for about 3 years. He spent about 3.5, 4 years with him, and he was with him when he passed away.
Mhm.
But around 3 years, Yogananda brought some guests to the hermitage, and Kriyananda was sitting meditating with a group of the monks who were meditating, and Yogananda just walked the guests through. And when he passed behind Kriyananda, he said, um, "Look how I've changed Walter," because he called him Walter. "Look how I've changed Walter." And Kriyananda was taken back by it. He said, "What do you mean look how you've changed me? I've been sitting here and meditating and doing all this."
Mm.
And he came up to him afterwards and he said, "What do you mean? What do you mean by that? You didn't give me any credit for the work that I've been doing, and I've been doing a lot of work." And he said, "Oh, so you think you're the one that's doing it all? Good for you." And he patted him on the head and just walked away. But we
Wow.
have to understand that we are not the doers in this world.
No.
And I love what you're saying about that thing about surrender. And so, what I would just ask our listeners to do is, are you capable of surrendering?
Mm.
Are you capable of seeing that there's a hand bigger than yours that's running this world? And are you able to surrender into that? And are you also able to see that when you jump out of the box that you think you're out of the box of, are you only jumping into another box that's holding you enclosed in that box? Or are you boxless?
Yeah.
Interesting, right? Um, do you think it's more important? Both of these are important, so I know both of them are important. But what's more important for you right now? Do you think it's more important for you to have a platform where you can speak and say what's on your mind and be heard, or to create a platform for other people to be heard and that you can listen to them?
Wow, that's a beautiful question. And it's interesting, it comes at a perfect time because I have created another platform, and we're bringing more consciousness. We call it Conscious Nation. So we're bringing more consciousness into the world. I'm merely a channel. So what happens is I provide a platform or a space where from other people can kind of use that space to allow themselves to grow and be heard. As you said about Yogananda or any teacher out there, we're not here to. I'm not here to fix somebody. I'm not here to do my voodoo. I'm not that person. Just yesterday, actually, this happened to me. Someone asked me if you can just help me. Can you see what's happening and really come and fix me? That's that cry,
Yeah,
which I totally understand. But I'm not here to fix. Who am I? I'm not here able to fix anybody. I'm merely here as a channel, and I live to totally surrender, but I can't say that I've got there yet.
yeah. I don't know anybody who has in my personal life, and I've met a ton of spiritual people, but I don't know anybody that's 100% surrendered, even the ones that say they have. I always, I I see things that am unblessed with by the fact that I see too much. Um,
Mm,
do you think have you felt like you fit into the world growing up and being a part of the world, or have you always felt different?
I've always felt different.
Well,
And it's funny, it's the first time I'm talking about this because for me, everything on the outside world appears to be great, which it is. It's a wonderful life. I can't complain or wouldn't change it for the world. But I've never felt like I fit in simply because of the fact that I had this very deep spiritual longing all my life.
yeah,
Now, it's been great in that I could pursue it. So I had the freedom to pursue that life. And I've always had two different boxes, as you put it, with two different paths. One is my professional and personal life, and then there's the spiritual life. I've always kept them separate, and they've just all always been marching along in a very nice way. So I felt to a large extent, I felt satisfied. But it was only when I started to that spiritual or the kind of that inner world started to take over, and didn't want to have that fake other persona anymore.
yeah,
That's when that's what I call the dark side,
yeah,
and that's when I got to really test it. So it's a beautiful life. It's been wonderful. I've gotten, I have a great family, but it's definitely a life that is very different than a traditional life of an Indian girl.
yeah,
And so that's why, most Indian girls my age are married, have two kids. And it's a life that I always thought I wanted too. So, have married kids, husband, big home, the works. And, there's no reason why I couldn't have had that life.
right,
But it was amazing to me how I never, um, I wanted it, but I never said yes to it when it was presented to me. And so it's just interesting in life. And that's the sense from which I felt like I never quite fit in
yeah,
because I never jumped on it. I've had many of times I've had the opportunity, but I never really was like, oh my God, yes, or I don't have any regrets. I
yeah,
don't have any regrets about anybody I've met that it's like, oh my God, I wish. It's
yeah,
never been the case for me. And for that, I am eternally grateful because I always had a very deep spiritual connection within that allowed me to always just come back to my home center,
yeah.
just coming right back. And so I don't know that I'm just very grateful. So for
Yeah.
that.
I think I've had some regrets along the way. And I think what's happened for me is that, pardon my narcissism in talking about the mosaic, because it's not even what's in the book, it's just the image of it that is starting to play in my life so much, is when the pieces of my mosaic have been separate from each other. I've always not felt complete in being in this piece or in this piece or in this piece. But when the PIECEs have come together, they've created a PEACE in me that has been the integration of all those pieces. That now I can live in that integration more and not feel so separate from all the piece that I had by having the pieces be separate, if that makes sense. It's just interesting that the sound of the word, even though it's spelled differently, plays so beautifully into the concept of what I'm talking about. When the pieces were separate, there was no peace. But when the
Mm.
pieces came together, there was peace. And that's what it's taken me 65 years of my life to start to see, that the mosaic is the integration of all of us into that one piece that is the beautiful artwork of our life.
Wow. It's beautiful, and you're bringing it to the world, and you're helping other people fill their mosaic.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating to me. It's really, I, when I was at Hay House, I saw people write books that they thought they were writing for the world. What they realized is they were writing the books they most needed to read most of the time. There are very few people like a
Mhm.
Yogananda who writes books for the world. He doesn't need to read that book. He wrote it for us. But most people write the book they most need to read. And certainly the Mosaic was the book I most needed to read, and that's why I wrote it. And if it
Wow.
benefits anybody else, it's fabulous. Would you say you're a person that lives from your head or your heart?
I am actually someone that lives from my head, but I aspire to live from the heart
Wow, that
every day.
surprised me. I thought so. I love that I asked that because I would have assumed the opposite. But I think that your aspiration is becoming more because I feel you and I feel your heart very much when you speak.
It is, and you make it really easy to express myself from the heart, and I have actually gotten better with that. But it's been my personal and the struggle over the last just few years when I started listening to my heart. So I'll tell you a story about the heart and the head. So in my body, if you cut my body in half, we have the heart, the right and left brain thing going on, and one side of my body always had a lot of inflammation on
Wow.
the right side, and it was just like always there. There was like a dull pain, and it doesn't come up in any medical thing. It's not really medically, there's nothing wrong, but it's always there. And it wasn't until I started doing some deep meditation, I started actually asking and looking in to see what that's about. And it seemed like there was always this struggle with like my head taking over from the heart side. Like there's a deep longing to be heard from that place.
Yeah.
So it's only over the last few years that I've kind of backed down because I always wanted to get somewhere. It was
Yeah.
like always getting, and now it's a dance between the letting and the getting, and it's definitely an area where I still need to do lots of work on it. But it's become a little more playful than before,
Yeah.
so I'm just grateful, and the information's gone, and everything is more centered.
Congratulations. What a beautiful thing. I love that saying. It's a dance between the letting and the getting. I've never heard that before. I
Yeah.
love that. Do you think you're a leader or a follower?
I'm definitely a leader, but sometimes I wish I could just be a follower.
Yeah. Can I ask you a an add-on question to that? When we look at the world we live in today, and we both live in America now, and the easiest example we can look at, without getting into a political discussion, because I don't want it to be a political discussion, but you could look at medicine, you could look at science, you could look at education, you could look at women's rights, you could look at any issue. It seems like we elect leaders in our country to lead our country, but our leaders it seems like more and more now are afraid to leave the silo of what their party believes or what the people of like mind believe. And yet, and it doesn't matter if you're a pro Trump or an anti Trump person, both people do the same thing. You know, the pro Trump people won't leave his side, even when it looks like he's done so many things that
Mm,
any normal person would look at and say, well, how could that be okay? But our leaders become followers in that point. And the Democrats also don't give the dog a bone. Like he's done some good things, but
mhm,
every time he turns a corner, they hit him with a wood plank. It's like
yeah.
he has no chance. And nobody leaves that to say, well, hold on, he hasn't done everything wrong. He's done some good things. And why don't we find where the goodness is between both of us and come together and start to build something? But the lead people that we've elected to be our leaders don't really feel like they lead.
Mm.
What do you think about that? They seem like they're following their silo.
You know, this is where, and it's hard to have this discussion without getting too political, but unfortunately, we are living in a time where um, I think this whole system of bipartisan is really disappointing. And I'm glad that we have someone like Trump in office that can help us really challenge that system because Trump does a lot of things that are not Republican or Democratic pros, but he's the first one who's come around who doesn't actually fall in one or the other as easily. But I am actually I find it disappointing that everything that we get from the media or the things that come to us from the political system is either taking us to the right or to the left.
Yeah,
I think as an individual and as an American and as a very proud American to be an American, I think it's very important for each one of us to just kind of bring some togetherness and be
yeah,
whole and be individual and really let us make that choice for ourselves. I am really disappointed to see even the media is trying to take us left or right, or
yeah,
even like sometimes when I hear about the things around COVID, it's like, well, if we come out too soon, then the economy will get better. And so then that will hurt the Democrats, or if it will hurt the Republicans. And it's like, we're facing a health crisis. We're
right,
human beings.
right,
So just coming back to who we are as individuals and then coming from that point and place. And it's not so much about leading or following, but then creating
yeah,
something whole. This is why I liked it when you talked about the fact that you work with businesses um, around innovation, or different concepts. Because when we start creating as whole bodies, whole beings, as individuals, and as we are allowed to express that individuality from that place, that's when we start seeing impact, and
yeah,
that's when we start creating a world that's when we start creating the Teslas and the people who are breaking the norm and moving and marching forward, and people are looking back and looking at them and saying, how are they doing this,
yeah,
and that's the kind of person as a leader I would wish to be, where
yeah,
I aspire to be. And I'm like so intrigued by people that when I see people like, Jeff Bezos or some of these really successful companies, and in a time of pandemic, or sometimes I look at that Tesla stock rising and I'm like, why is it going up?
yeah,
It
right,
makes no sense.
right,
And so, and that's when you've got something.
yeah,
It's when you've gone beyond. It's way beyond technology. I mean, we don't even know how we're grouping it. Is it technology? Is it an automaker? Is it what's happening? And
yeah,
that's when you've created something that is impactful. So I wish in my world, in my life, I get an opportunity to create, or actually, I wish I have the courage to create in a way where people can look at it and say, wow, I never thought of things that way. And that's
yeah,
true innovation. I'm not saying I've arrived by any means,
yeah.
but I wish that that's how innovation could be.
I love it.
committed to or done in this world is by individuals creating and creating impact.
So I love everything you said. And again, under separate cover, I would love to have a conversation to see how we could forward that together.
Mm,
Because I believe that we were never meant to do this alone, like pieces of a mosaic. We are
correct.
only as, but together we're much stronger. Um,
Amen to that.
yeah,
Amen.
thank you. So, one of the things that happened for me in one of the conversations that I had with a stranger the other day was when I asked that question, are you a leader or a follower? And I asked the follow up political question. What I realized is we elect the leaders that we elect because they're in resonance with what we actually believe about ourselves. And I saw in myself that I don't often have the courage, as much as I believe that I do. I often don't have the courage to go against my own momentum of my own belief systems. And to be a real leader means to stand up to my own belief systems and take a look at where are my belief systems leading me, and do I have the courage to get out of the box, not into another box, but to elevate above where boxes are and
Mm.
to see the world differently. And I realized that I don't know many people that have the courage to lead themselves, let alone lead the world. But I think when we get to that place where we are okay, hold on 1 minute. I'm gonna have to. Can you hear the phone ringing or no?
No.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Give me one short second here. Let me just communicate to my daughter that I'm running a few minutes late, and then we'll. Oh, jeez. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Here, hold on 1 second. This is well. This is life, though, right? This is what happens that we get our moments like this. Give me
Are you going to be able to edit it?
10. Maybe, maybe not. It'll probably not. I'm just gonna, but I'll let it run because I like people to see how flawed I am. It doesn't matter. So, um, but what happens in this world that we live in is when we are able to, it's a reflection of us. Like we were saying before, everything is it's not other people that judge us, it's us judging us, and then we allow it, we show that to people. We don't lead ourselves, so we don't have that leadership. But there are people like an Elon Musk who has the courage to go against the grain of what he himself even may believe and innovate within his own life to do it. And I think that's what we're so inspired by. So, your thoughts on that?
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I think that that's the thing. We want to innovate, and you know that since I'm in the middle of this journey, I've not arrived by any means. I think the path is to continue to grow and evolve and really embrace change.
Yeah,
And those are all things that are really easy on a conceptual level, but when you actually have to do it, and you have to continue to evolve and train and change and grow, they're pretty challenging, and they test us every time. And COVID is something that has actually taken that and put it right in front of us for each one of us, where we have to really step up our game and really see how this change, how can we really contribute in this way.
yeah,
So the way I encourage people to look at is, how do each day ask yourself that question? Like, how am I actually contributing? What am I serving to? And like I said, my dream is to be able to create something where people say, wow, I'm so grateful that you stepped up. I want to
yeah,
say, I'm grateful that I stepped up to be part of something
yeah,
that I can create that. And one thing that you brought up earlier that's a really important point that I want to bring home for myself is that we never create in silos. So I am not here, no matter what banner I may want to hold on to, I cannot do anything alone.
yeah,
Creation alone is just a miscreation. It's really missing the opportunity but it's really working with others and how we are in that dance together,
Yeah.
how we make that happen. Working with people, different personalities, different ways, and and that's where the play is. So we have lila is the word that Krishna used, right? And that means play.
Yeah.
And really, that's all it is. That's what life is lila. It's a play of life.
Love it.
I wish and I hope that I can live in that ultimate state of lila all the time. It tests me every time, but that is my wish and my aspiration, to be able to create from a space of playfulness.
I see it happening for you. So just know that an old fat guy in
Mhm.
San Diego actually sees it right, that you don't have to wish for it. It's already there. And
Wow, thank you.
you just have to get rid of the stuff that's keeping you from actually seeing it. Just to, who cares? Maybe it's trash can material that I just gave you, or maybe it's real. But I see it
You
right when
know,
I look at you,
mm,
just like I see an ocean behind you. I'm teasing you. Just like when I look at you, I see it. It's there. So it's just recognizing it's there. You don't have to get there. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to change. You don't have to become something. It's actually right there. You just have to see it. And
wow.
that's the beauty of the Mosaic story, is that is that we don't see what's there. We see what we see. And when we have the take the moment to allow ourselves to get out of the way of what we see and see what's there, the world becomes completely different for us.
Mm.
Do you
Wow,
believe
that's deep.
every once in a while a blind
I mean,
squirrel?
there's a lot there. I felt what you were saying.
Good,
So there's a lot to that.
good. I say every once in a while a blind squirrel catches a nut. Even we can all get something once in a while. Do you do you think people are more different than they are similar, or do you think people are more similar than they are different?
Well, that's a good question. I think we're all a lot more similar than we are different.
Yeah,
We have to remember that at the very core, we're all seeking the same thing.
yeah,
So no matter what color, race, nation, no matter where we are, we're all seeking happiness, fulfillment, joy, all the good stuff that when we dial into our heart and our wholeness is, like you're saying, there for us.
yeah,
The unfortunate part in life, as we're experiencing right now, is that sometimes that journey to ourselves, where we can see it in ourselves and really embody it that way, takes work, not just sometimes, all the time.
yeah,
So, we always say, I used to always say, or I love the saying where they say, the life that God has created for us is far greater than anything we imagine for ourselves.
yeah,
So we could have a list of, I live in a world where we always have goals and accountability, and those kinds of things are all there. And yes, we should have those. I personally haven't had any of those in several years, because I'm like, to let the path lead me. But those things are only there, and they can only take us but so far, because the life that God dreamed for us is far, far, far greater than anything
yeah,
we can imagine for ourselves.
yeah. What a beautiful statement. And if people would just listen to these last few minutes, if you hear nothing else from this conversation, just listen to those last few minutes, and let that don't only listen with your ears, listen with your heart, listen with your soul, and see what happens when you do that. Can you feel the difference in you from when you first came into the room and now?
It's so funny you asked that, because I was thinking that same thing. And I was like, I guess it's not appropriate to say that during an interview, but from the time I walked into now, I mean, my entire face has changed.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you go back and listen to it, and I'll tell you why that is, in case people are wondering what's happening here, is being able to really speak from your heart and being able to be received from your heart. and being able to be heard and just kind of having that level of dialogue is very different than speaking from a place of wanting to be heard.
Yeah. Uh, it is so beautiful to watch that. And it's so beautiful to see this person now. Not that the
Mm,
person that came into the room wasn't beautiful, but what's it been? Half an hour, 45 minutes that we've talked? It
yeah.
doesn't take that long. And so, what I want to do is invite those of you who see it along with us to hold
Hmm.
that space for other people, because look how easy it is. It really isn't hard. All of us, I've had the beautiful opportunity to be with some of the richest people in the world, to sit in their dining rooms, in their living rooms, to meet their families, to play with their children, and for them to ask my counsel and for them to give me their counsel, which has been so blessed to me. I've been able to sit with some of the greatest spiritual teachers and self help people and motivational people in the same way in their living rooms, at their dining room tables, sharing meals with them and being able to share dialogue and conversation. And they've given me their counsel and occasionally have asked mine, and how blessed I felt in that interaction. And I've had the greatest opportunity to sit on cardboard boxes with some of the poorest people in the world and share exactly that same thing, to meet their friends, to sit with them over a loaf of bread and a bottle of wine, and to sit there and just get their counsel and have them occasionally ask them for my counsel. And how beautiful it is to meet with people and just feel people on different levels. And every person, no matter how rich they were, no matter how poor, no matter what color their skin, no matter what religion they practice, no matter what border they lived behind, no matter what they believed or didn't believe, wanted the same three things. They wanted to be loved and accepted. They wanted to be listened to and heard. They wanted to be acknowledged and validated. In my 65 years of life, no one's ever said to me, Danny, we want you to believe like we believe. Because when I love them and accept them and I validate them and I acknowledge them and I listen to them and hear them, they know that I'm entitled to my own beliefs, but they don't feel the need for me to believe what they believe, because I accept what they believe. And there's something so exquisitely beautiful in that process, that we change when that happens. And it doesn't take a master's degree. It doesn't take an ordained position. It just takes somebody who cares enough to actually take the time to just feel and do it. Um, do you think the world's speaking to us right now?
Absolutely. I think we're speaking to sharing with the world how the world needs to kind of give and receive,
Yeah.
and how it's a dance.
What do you think it wants to say to us?
Um, I think the world is saying to us that we need more and more and more of this level of being speaking and being heard.
Love that. Love that. What do you think
Love,
it's?
like you said. Sorry.
That's okay. No. Do you think it's saying something to you personally? And if so, what do you think that it's saying to you personally?
That there, this ocean that is behind me on this image is representing a little more than just a beautiful image of me wanting to be by the water. It's actually a sense of freedom and an ease, and there's a whole sense of beauty right behind me if I allow it into my life. So really stepping it in to, as you said, what's already here.
Love that. Love that. Aparna, you have 1 minute. You have a world of knowledge within you. You've shared so much of yourself, and I'm so thankful for you for coming into this room and being so open and vulnerable and free and just yourself. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. I
Thank
want to
you.
give you 1 minute to say something to this world that you feel might help this world reverse some of the momentum that it's going through.
first, I want to acknowledge and thank you for creating this platform. And I think that there are a whole host of people out there like me who want to create and be authentic and really bring huge amount of impact into this world from that space of being authentic, being real, being love, and embodying that and really inspiring that in others. So I encourage everybody to stand up to that, own it, including myself, to own it and really let that place of love and acceptance and being heard and being seen, let share that with the world more in a way that it inspires others and create from that space, live from that space and embody it, because ultimately, as we've seen with this interview, is that our presence and how we show up in this world is really going to be the difference going forward. From it always was, but for me personally, it's a nice note to note that it makes a huge difference, and we have the opportunity to create a world of impact in this world. And for that, that is what I inspire for. That's what I aspire for. That's what I really live for. And that's what I feel really grateful for you bringing this to us.
Well, I can't tell you how much, what a pleasure it's been to have you walk into the room as a stranger and have you walk away from the room as someone I feel like I've known for thousands of years. And how
Yes,
beautiful is that, right? And
beautiful.
so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming here as you are and for taking this journey together and allowing yourself to even sit in this space together with an imperfect stranger like myself and just share together. Because when two energies come together, what always seems to happen is that which doesn't belong has to fall apart, and that which does belong stays. And what really happens is what belongs is our essence. And I feel as if I've touched on your essence and you've touched on my essence. And I really, the commingling of two souls that didn't know each other, there's no reason we should have had this conversation. Everything my parents told me, don't talk to strangers. You have to, it takes a certain amount of time for people to feel comfortable in your presence. None of that really happened because over the course of about an hour, look where we are. So I want to invite those of you who are listening, watch these, but don't just watch them to hear our conversations. Watch them so you get a sense of what would be your place. How can you show up in the world and create moments like this? If you like these moments, if you don't like these moments, don't watch them, don't do anything, screw them. But if you like moments like this, if you like this, what seems to happen in this room, to me, this is a magic room. Create your own magic somewhere. And what would that look like? How would that be? There have been stranger realities than having two strangers meet and create the most beautiful world that you could ever imagine simply by sharing their life for a few moments together. In my book, The Mosaic, those characters that I met are still with me. They're archetypes in my life. They come to me all the time and they guide me. Take some chances, take some risks. I want to thank you again for coming. I want to thank those of you who listen to the show for listening. And Aparna, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to still say?
No, I just thank you. Thank you for creating from such a beautiful space and creating a beautiful platform. It gives me something to aspire to as I create more um, and share more. And so, thank you for that journey of transformation that people can see. It's so simple and yet can have huge amounts of impact. So, thank you.
What an honor. Thank you for noticing it. Thank you for recognizing. Thank you for participating in it. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for creating it with me in this moment. So, again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Aparna, for your time, for your beauty, for who you are as a human being, for what you're bringing to this world. Thank you to those of you who are listening and share this conversation with other people so that people can feel it. If you feel to, if you don't share it. It's okay. Whatever you feel is good. And if you want to have a conversation and you feel like you would like a chance to be heard, or you know somebody who wants to have a chance to be heard, contact me. I would love to have a conversation with you. In the
Great.
meantime, God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And until the next stranger walks into the room, we'll see you later.